Shavua Tov, Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. Chodesh Tov. We're now on Daf Kuf Ches, Amud Aleph, and we're up to Itmar. And the Gemara is now going to present the requirements of Heseibah. So let's see where we're up to in the Gemara. You'll see where it says Rashbam, about 1/3 of the Daf of the Amud down, and you move across to the left. Itmar Matzah Sorech Heseibah. So Matzah requires Heseibah, and we lean on the left side, and that's called Kederech B'nei Chorim Zecher L'Geulas Mitzrayim. So that's a requirement of Matzah. With regard to the eating of Morar, Ein Tzarech Heseibah, and that's because Morar is Zecher Li'avdus. So to demonstrate Cherus in the case of Morar is not necessary. However, the Beis Yosef says, Im Rotza Rashoy, if he wants to lean when he eats the Morar, he's allowed to do so. However, the poskim are not excited about this, and they seem to assume that l'chatchila, again, it's only l'chatchila, you should not do a Heseibah when you eat Morar, but the Eved you don't say even if you did a Heseibah, but it's not recommended at all, and really it's against the halacha. Now, what's the story with Yayin? Right, we have a mitzvah of Daled Kosos, so we have two transmissions. We have Idmar Mishmeder of Nachman, according to one tradition in the name of Rav Nachman, Sarach Heseibah. Heseibah is a requirement with regard to Daled Kosos. The Idmar Mishmeder of Nachman, but we have another alternative transmission attributed to Rav Nachman, Ein Sarach Heseibah, below Pligi. So the Gemara now reconciles these two transmissions of Rav Nachman. Does the mitzvah Daled Kosos require Heseibah? Does it not? Ha b'tarte kasi kamoi, ha b'tarte kasi basroi. There's a difference here between the first two kosos and the second. And now the Gemara has two traditions as to which of these two sets require a Heseibah, which do not. Amrila, according to one opinion, lahai gisa. It goes in the direction of the first two kosos. The Amrila, lahai gisa, other go to the other way, the second two kosos. Amrila, lahai gisa, trei kasi kamoi. According to one opinion, it's the first two kosos that are recited over the Haggadah. Bo Heseibah, they require Heseibah. Now he's beginning to undergo and experience Cherus. He's Osek. He's now dedicating himself for the first two kosos to Geulas Mitzrayim, and it's appropriate that at that point he should do Heseibah. Trei Kosi Basroi, lo bo Heseibah. He's already finished his Haggadah. He's now eating his Suda, Birkas HaMazon, reciting over a kos, then he goes on to Hallel. Okay, that's already a different part, a different kiyum. He already fulfilled the basic Geulas, the Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, Geulas Mitzrayim. And right now, for the last two kosos, there's no need for Heseibah. No such requirement. That's according to one opinion. Fine. Now he adds the three words here. Umay dahava hava. When he gets to the last two kosos, there's no need for a Heseibah. Because again, Heseibah is connected to Amiras Haggadah, and by the time he gets to the last two kosos, he's already completed his Amiras Haggadah. And my dava, that which was already was, and that's he already told the story of Gulas Mitzrayim, and therefore he doesn't need Heseibah. Now, Tosfos raises the following problem. If you're telling me that the second set of kosos, according to this tradition, does not require a save because he's already completed his Amiras Haggadah, then why did we establish that Matzah requires a save? After all, he eats the Matzah after he already made the bracha of Gal Yisrael and he completed Amiras Haggadah. Tosfos asks furthermore, he already fulfilled his chiyuv Heseibah with the two kosos that came before the matzah. Why does he need an additional Heseibah when he eats the matzah? And furthermore, the Torah says, "Vayofu es habotzek asher otziu miMitzrayim ugos matzos ki lo chametz ki gershu miMitzrayim," that they didn't have an opportunity and enough time to allow their dough to rise, to ferment, and the geula already took place. So it means that the eating of the matzah is zeicher lecherus. So you see that if you have an achila, which is zeicher lecherus, then that achila requires Heseibah. Hence matzah, which is zeicher lecherus, because of vayofu es habotzek, etc., it requires Heseibah. If that be the case, then you see that the requirement of Heseibah applies even if he already recited Yetzias Mitzrayim, meaning before he ate the matzah. Now, the last four lines of Tosfos might be an answer to this question. I'm going to take a look here in the back for a second. Let me just see. You have this, Sean, right? I'm not sure if I'll find anything here, but let me just take a look. He says, "V'afagav dahavya lechem oni," so matzah is considered lechem oni. Nevertheless, we're going to require a say because yesh liochlo derech cherus. So I guess Tosfos is saying that there are two aspects of matzah. There's cherus and there's oni. Umash yitzorch Heseibah v'matzah haynu dafka k'shuvorchem oleh birchas al achilas matzah ubeafikov lo b'achilas matzah shebetoch ha'seuda she'eina chol v'liyom. I don't see that Tosfos says has answered his question. I see. He's saying the following. The reason why we don't require a save in the second two kosos, according to this tradition that we're studying now, is because he already recited the geula before the seuda. And Maida. Oh, but you'll ask me about matzah. Why does matzah require Heseibah? And we don't apply the principle of Maida Hava. He already finished his recitation of the Haggadah. Shani matzah she ikar seuda yosef min hayayin. And furthermore, yayin hesiv kvar b'shnei kosos rishonos. Notice he fulfilled the mitzvah of Heseibah, visibly daled kosos, with the shtei kosos rishonos. But when he gets to matzah, once again, it's a brand new chiyuv matzah, and Heseibah applies to matzah because it's zecher l'cheirus. That's what we have here so far in Tosfos. So now we have the second tradition. Adrab, Trei Kosi Basroi Boy Heseibah. The last two kosos require Heseibah. Hahi Shaita de Kohavya Cherus. So it's now that he finished, that he completed his story of the Shibud and the Geula, and he recited the Haggadah. Now is the appropriate moment of Cherus for Heseibah. But Trei Kosi Kamoy Loboy Heseibah, Dakati Avonim Ayinu Ka'amar. During the first two kosos, he's still holding by Avodim Ayinu, meaning he's still in the state of Avos. He hasn't yet told the story of the Geula. So what do we do now? We have two traditions, one of which has Heseibah's requirement in the first two kosos, another in the last two kosos. Hashda dit marhachi. We have these two opinions. Is therefore idi the idi bo Heseibah. We have to be machmir and safek. We don't know which set of kosos requires Heseibah, therefore we require Heseibah misafek for both sets, the two first and the two last. And now there's a whole discussion here, maybe we'll get to it later, about Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula, why we have to be machmir here, since it's only a mitzvah D'Rabbanan. Okay. So now we'll put this on the side for a moment, and we're going to take a look at the Amudei Hod, which you have in your Hashem, page Chavdal. Din Heseibah v'matzah u'ba'afikomi. So in Sif Aleph here, he quotes the entire Gemara that we learned, and then he gets to Tosfos. So on the bottom right column on Chavdal, he says that my davahava shekvar omru geula lifnei ha'seuda. So he's already recited the geula by the time he gets to the seuda. The afagav de matzah tzricha Heseibah, and that's already after he said geula. The law amar my dava. We're not going to apply that principle my dava. Shani matzah she ikar seuda Yoser Miyayin. The Od, Miyayin Heseibah Kvar B'Shtei Kosel Rishona. The Od Sheksu B'Torah Seichel Echirshlo Hislik B'Seichel Lahachmitz Hashenigalu. Yafagav Davi Lechem. Oni Yesh La'ochlo Terech Kerus U'Mashin Tzorech Heseibah B'Matzah Hainu Kishem Avarchem Al Achilas Matzah V'Ha'afikum. So right now he wants to focus our attention on the second answer of Tosfos. Then in Yayin and Daled Kosos, we can apply the principle of Maidahava Hava because he already fulfilled his mitzvah of Heseibah on the first two Kosos. And if you want to generate a chiyuv of Heseibah on the last two Kosos, we're going to say no. Maidahava Hava, meaning he already fulfilled his mitzvah of Heseibah in the first two Kosos. Now it says, Lama tzarech lahasid b'afikomen. It says, Umash tzarech Heseibah b'matzah, hainu k'shemavarchem oleh al achilas matzah u'b'afikomen. So why does the afikomen require a Heseibah? Yesh l'tma b'divrei Tosfos. I don't understand. Tosfos is saying that you need a Heseibah in matzah, and it's not enough to have a Heseibah in the first two kosos of yayin. And that's because of the svara of my Baba Hava, that doesn't part you from a Heseibah completely, but rather it parts you from a Heseibah if you already were Makayim the Heseibah, like in the case of Kosos. So you already fulfilled this mitzvah of Heseibah in the first two Kosos, and therefore he doesn't require a Heseibah in the second set of two Kosos. But for Matzah, Shadayin Lo Heseibah, he has never fulfilled the mitzvah of Heseibah with Matzah. Tzarech lahasid afagav the kvar hava cherus. We're not going to apply the principle of Maidahava Hava. Lefi zeh tamua lama tzarech lahasid b'achilas afikomen. Harei kvar hesiv b'eis achilas gezayis orishon. Ulahasiv pam nosefes einu tzarech b'Maidahava Hava. So first he's asking, why does the afikomen require Heseibah? He's already fulfilled Heseibah with the first matzah that he ate after he made the bracha al achilas matzah. And just like we said in Kosos, that according to this opinion, there's no need for Heseibah in the second set of Kosos because he already fulfilled Heseibah and Daled Kosos in the first two Kosos. So too here, he already fulfilled Heseibah in the first matzah that he ate. Why does he need a Heseibah on the second matzah of afikomen? Anybody want to suggest an answer before we see what he says? I mean, the first answer that comes to my mind is that the afikomen itself is a replacement for the first achilas matzah. In other words, we don't know when to eat the matzah. The Torah commands us to eat the matzah. Is it the first achila or is it the afikomen at the end of the meal? On the one hand, it says al matzos umaror yochulu, and the matzah therefore should come before the mora at the very beginning. But on the other hand, we have a kiyum of matzah, which is called alasova. When you're filled, when you're already satiated. So that halacha of matzah asova, which is a reflection of korban Pesach, which has to be eaten al asova. So that sets up a mitzvah of achilas matzah al asova, which we fulfill with the afikomen when we've already eaten the meal and we're satiated. So which matzah is the matzah of the mitzvah? Is it the first matzah or is it the last matzah? I don't think we know the answer to that question. And there's a very strong possibility that the matzah we eat at the end of the meal, the afikomen, that is the mitzvah of matzah. And if matzah requires a Heseibah, then it's not enough that he did a Heseibah on the first matzah. He has to do a Heseibah on the afikomen, which might be the ikar mitzvah of matzah. Now you might ask me the following question: if the ikar mitzvah of matzah is the last matzah, the afikomen, why do we make the bracha on the first matzah? So that has to do with a sugya and a principle called me'achar shemile kresim mehem chozer mevarech. The Gemara says, like, let's say, for example, you only have one yeret. It's a strange mitzvah, but the Gemara has this case where the only vegetable he has for the mitzvah of tibul is mora. He has no other vegetable. Now there are two tibulim, the first of which is just to enhance or arouse the curiosity of the children. That's not the mitzvah of achilas mara. The achilas mara for mitzvah is going to be after we eat the matzah. So why should we make a bracha on the first tibul, which is before the matzah, and its goal and its purpose is just to make the children ask why are we doing this? But yet we make a bracha because li'achar shemila kreisbem shuv chozer mevarech. Doesn't make sense that after he ate the maror, he should then make the bracha. His belly, so to speak, is filled with maror, and now he's making a bracha on a mitzvah achilas maror. Here too, we don't know which matzah is the matzah's mitzvah. Is it the first matzah or the last matzah? But in any event, we're going to make the bracha on the first matzah because of this principle that you can't fill up your belly with matzah in this case and then make a bracha on. So the bracha will come earlier before the first matzah, but really it's quite possible that the kiyum of matzah is on the last matzah. Now, if that be the case, we can justify why you need a Heseibah, because the real achilas matzah, according to this tzad, is the last matzah, what we call the afikomen. And if that's the real mitzvah of matzah, don't tell me that you already did a Heseibah on the first matzah. That Heseibah on the first matzah is fine, but it has nothing to do with the ikar mitzvah of matzah, which is going to be fulfilled with the afikomen. Now, if you didn't like that shot, then let me try another possibility. The afikomen is zechel Pesach. As we said before, in Korban Pesach, there's halacha of achila ala soba, and the meat of the Korban Pesach was eaten at the end of the meal, when he was already satiated from his meal. And the afikomen likewise is eaten zechel Korban Pesach, which is at the end of the meal. So in a sense, when we eat the afikomen, we're eating the Korban Pesach. And the Korban Pesach, no doubt, requires a Heseibah, because, as we said about Matzah, that the Matzah is Zeichel Lecherus, certainly the Korban Pesach is Zeichel Lecherus. Right? How do we say it? Pesach al Shumah, al Shum Shepasach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu al Botei Avosenu b'Mitzrayim. And so the Geula came through Pesach. All right. I gave you two possibilities. I don't know that you liked either of them. Nobody said a word here. So I have to assume you appreciated both ends, or the opposite. You didn't like any of them.
Don't you have machlokes regarding whether afikomen is the achelas matzah? That's or the afikomen is the achelas matzah. So there's a
right. So if you go according to that opinion that the real achelas matzah is the afikomen, then it requires Heseibah. Don't tell me, well, you already did Heseibah on the first matzah, because that's not the mitzvah of matzah. But the other possibility I thought would be equally attractive would be to say that the afikomen is eaten zechel Pesach. Right. It's a substitute for the Korban Pesach. No doubt the Korban Pesach in and of itself would require a Heseibah. It's zechel Lecherus, al Shum Shepasach, etc. So therefore, the afikomen, which is zechel Pesach, would likewise require a Heseibah. Those are the two approaches that we see. Right now, he doesn't offer an answer. That's going to come up on page Chaf Hey, but he asks another question. The Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yishuv ben Levi, that a shamash she'achal kezayis matzah b'Heseibah yotza, Uletosis tzorch beis zeisim gam kizayis afikomen. So again, there was some sort of havamina that maybe the shamash who's serving the meal, maybe we could be more lenient, but the maskana is no. He has to eat a kizayis matzah b'Heseibah. Not only that, Tosfos says he has to eat another kizayis matzah for the afikomen. We're not letting him off the hook in any way. Yesh l'tmoah. But what bothers us here? So how could Tosfos say that he needs Heseibah on both kizesim? The Gemara says, in the name of Yishuv ben Levi, that a shamash has to eat matzah and umesiv, and he does Heseibah and yotzah, and he only ate one kizayis. How does Tosfos say that the shamash has to eat two kizayis? I'm not sure if this is such a kasha, because when it says a shamash achal matzah umesiv yotzah, and he derives from that statement of Rabbi Yishuv ben Levi the conclusion that all he has to do is have Heseibah on one kizayis, that's because Rabbi Yishuv ben Levi is talking about matzah as the ikar mitzvah of matzah. He's not talking about the kizayis bachrona of matzah afikomen. V'nireh, Tehine Tosus b'daf Chof Kuf Chof. Istapek im Adam Yotzi Dechovas Matzah b'Kzayis Rishon b'Chol Din Achilas Afikom L'Gad Kedei She'atam Matzah b'Fil. Okay. Oh, Shekiyum Mitzvahs Matzah Nasa B'Eis Achilas Kzayis Afikom. So this is what we said in our first approach, that we're not sure which is the Kiyum Mitzvahs Matzah. Is it the first matzah or is it the last matzah? The Afikomen matzah. The Yishlom Delochein Kosva Tosorach Lahosiv Gam Shemevorchem Al Achilas Matzah on the first matzah. The Gam Bisman Achilas Afikomen at the end of the Suda. Mishum Tedina Heseibah B'Eis Achilas Matzah Lim Mitzvah. The Keved the Mesafkel of Tosfos vacillates exactly when and with which matzah does he fulfill the mitzvah of matzah. Again, we have to analyze that suffix of Tosfos. Therefore, Tosfos says that you need a Heseibah at the time of the bracha. That's the first matzah. V'yam b'yeis achilas afikomen, the second matzah, which might in effect be the achilas matzah's mitzvah. וכן כוסף לצורך להוסיף גם בעץ הברכה, גם בעץ אכילס אפיקומן, ואין לומר שלא יסף בעץ אכילס אפיקומן, משום שכבר הסף בשעת ברכה, the first matzah, till its side, according to that side in Tosfos' suffix, the Makayim mitzvahs matzah rak בעץ אכילס אפיקוman, and that's the kiyum of matzah, is adai lo hasef b'matzah, sheyotzi bo yidei chovasa. The Heseibah of the first matzah is not a matzah which generates the kiyum mitzvah. It's only the afikomen, the second matzah, that generates the kiyum mitzvah. And Mevela, we understand the case of the Shamash. Why does Tosfos require a second Heseibah when he eats the afikomen? He says the Gemara of the Pshita, the Eza Kizayis Mekayim Mitzvah. In other words, when the Gemara says, that's because the Gemara is assuming that the first kizayis that eats at the beginning of the meal with the bracha of al achilas matzah, that's the kiyum of achilas matzah. And therefore, once he's fulfilled his chiyuv Heseibah with that matzah, there's no need for a second Heseibah. Tosfos is going with the suffix, we don't know which matzah is really the kiyum mitzvahs matzah. So this leads us to paragraph number Daled on the left column. I'm just going to take a break for a minute. Excuse me.